Today, I have the honor of sitting down with Jessica Lasecki, known by her call sign, Cosmic. And when you hear her story, the name starts to make a lot of sense because Jessica has lived a life that forces you to look at the bigger picture. She's a small town girl, a martial artist at heart, the oldest of 7 siblings, an instructor, a nurturer, an adventurer, and someone who has spent her life learning hard things and then turning around to teach those things to others. Jessica started Taekwondo at just 10 years old and by 16 was running her own school. She did that for a decade before stepping into the Air Force, carrying with her the discipline, responsibility, and servant leader mindset that martial arts tends to carve into a person when they truly commit to it. But what makes Jessica's story powerful is not what she accomplished. It is what she endured and what she has chosen to do with it. She's a 2-time rare cancer survivor, and that kind of confrontation with mortality has a way of stripping life down to the truth. It forces a person to ask, what actually matters? What am I building? Who am I becoming? And what will still be standing when I'm gone? Jessica took that pain and turned it into purpose. She became involved in the Air Force Wounded Warrior Program, serving as an ambassador, using her story to help others find language, hope, and resilience in their own battles. She later became a master resiliency trainer and helped build the first ever resiliency room at Goodfellow Air Force Base, leaving behind a space designed to strengthen the mental and physical wellness of instructors after her. She is someone who deeply believes that words matter and pessimism can become a prison, and optimism is not naivete. It is discipline. It is choosing to speak life while still having the courage to prepare for hardship. And today we're going to talk about purpose, union, legacy, men's mental health, boundaries, family, and what it means to leave something behind when legacy does not look exactly the way you once thought it would. Jessica, Cosmic, it's an honor to have you here. Welcome to the SMC Podcast.
Thank you. What an introduction.
Thank you. So before we get into the deep stuff, I have a starting question, and it's about your call sign.
Okay.
What is the story behind that, and how does it fit who you are?
Well, just kind of like everything was thrusted upon me in life. My call sign was a little tricky as well. I love doing things by the book and overachieving, if you haven't noticed. About a year and a half at this duty station, my leadership was actually kind of getting frustrated because I hadn't done any dumb stuff yet. They had me filling 3 hats at one time. I was teaching, holding down SEL duty, and also the mission planning cell lead. And so I was just doing all of this stuff. And finally, like, we're naming you. And so they had some like fun ideas, but they came up with Cosmic a couple different ways. But one of the main ones that stuck with me doing martial arts is I would get like a toe injury or my back was, killing me. And so one of the meanings of it is constant oversight, injury certain, because I had oversight on everything and then I was always getting injured. But then one of my favorite alterations to that is at NCOA, I'm a fitness nut. So I was like outperforming some of the guys carrying sandbags at the leadership school, and my classmates, they were like, Cosmic should mean it was cubicle. Wait, cubicle. Let's see, oversized muscles in cubicle. That's what it was. Crazy oversized muscles in cubicle. That's what it was. So yeah, I was like, oh my God, guys. So it's kind of evolved over time, but that's the general story how I got Cosmic.
That's fantastic. That's a great, and you've carried that along with you in your career. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's been a fun one. So hopefully it sticks. I think I need just one more MagCom, which is coming up in October. So it should stick permanently then.
Well, well, after this, and your story gets out, there will absolutely be a thing. And then what's great is that you can take that and you can create banners, and it's cosmic.
Right.
So
That's true.
that's
That's true.
fantastic. So
And
and that's a great nickname to have too.
I agree. No, it's been really fun. You know, cosmic in just its own, like when you think about what cosmic is, it's just kind of like interconnected or all encompassing, or, like in the Avengers, overseer, he's always, watching, and I kind of do kind of like to have oversight and watch and be interconnected. And then sometimes, things in life happen if you're paying attention, all this interconnectedness and the yoga piece. So it was really fitting that they landed on that.
That's fantastic. So I'm going to go way back here.
Okay.
So you describe yourself as a small town girl and a martial artist at heart. But when you think back to 10-year-old Jessica walking into Taekwondo for the first time, what do you think that she was looking for?
She was looking for the year to pass so she could go back to soccer. No, I was really introverted. I didn't like to talk to anybody other than my family members. And then, yeah, I walked through the doors. I don't even know if I really understood. Like, I watched The Karate Kid growing up, or Mr. Miyagi, wax on, wax off.
Great movies, by the way.
Yeah, right? So that was my, perception, I think, of martial arts, in a small town. And when I walked in the door and I saw people kicking and punching, I was like, oh, yeah, that's kind of like the movies, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. But then they started saying all this stuff, and you'd have to say things before class and after class, like integrity first, service before self, excellence in all you do, and I was like, it was very similar to the Air Force, if you will. I just said the Air Force ones, but it was like a list, and I was like, I have to say these things in front of everybody, so I had these like little fears of just speaking around people. But I got pulled off into a private room, and that's how they did their first classes, and the instructor, she was showing me like, this is how you do a kick. This is how you stand, and it was easy, but it was just enough of a challenge. And I guess my personality of like wanting to do good and wanting to succeed, like I just bit onto it, and I was like, oh, well, this isn't like the easiest thing, but it's not like the hardest thing either. And I just really took to it in those 2 classes. It was interesting.
That's fantastic. So you took to it early on, and this is when you were 10 years old, right?
Right.
So the martial arts felt kind of a natural placement for you. And
Yeah.
by the time that you were 16, you were running your own schoolhouse. How did that come to be?
Oh my God. I had gotten I think I was a 2nd degree recommended black belt. So I'd been at it for a while. And my main instructor had left, because it was a small town, so the school didn't make a lot of money. I mean, $60 a month per student, you're just barely paying rent with those kind of numbers. He went off to do the official martial art photography contract. So when you walk into a school anywhere, you'll probably see some sort of like school picture on the wall, and it has people doing different poses. So he was actually signed up to do that. He left the school in charge with another 1st degree black belt older gentleman. He had 2 stepdaughters, and he went on a trip with them. He had been preparing to test for a 2nd degree black belt for a while. And on the trip, unfortunately, he was just messing around in the water, and he lifted his girls up out of the water and blew out both of his shoulders.
Wow.
So he was done. He couldn't really do any motion above his head until he got that fixed. And at that point in his life, he was like, yeah, it's just, I'm not doing this anymore. So I was up at the Harrison school, and he stopped in, and he's like, hey, the school's hers. I I can't do this. I did this thing. So she's got it or it closes. And so my dad and the Harrison school owner sat down and we had a meeting right then and there. And they said, well, she can teach. But I want you, pointing to my dad, to essentially run the business side. So that way she can kind of be a kid still, if you will, and learn the business side of things, but not be overwhelmed. So that's how I ended up with the school at 16. It's not typical. Usually you buy into these things. So that
No,
was
exactly. And so you brought up a good point there. And so carrying that responsibility at such a young age, what did teaching teach you about leadership?
That one, I learned a lot of lessons, honestly. Oldest of 7, I was already like caring for my sisters, and I always had like a soft heart for kids. Anybody who walked through the door, I was just like, let's make you better. But the leadership side was tough. I was part of a small town, so we have small town gossip, and it was really difficult for me to parse out and like stay on that. Like what's really important? Like, so what? You go to this other school and you train with them. Like, I couldn't separate things like that at that age, so it really bothered me internally. And then I also had to kind of grow my leadership skills into things like getting those kids like some real world experience. So I would take them out to Taekwondo tournaments across the state. So like we would go to Tennessee, stuff like that, and we'd kind of do what I call like the convoy, if you will. So we'd all raise money and then we'd load up in the cars and go travel. And so in a way, I was kind of like getting them, out of their small town and into some of these bigger cities and showing them like, hey, there's more to the world than just a 1,300, populated town. Um, so trying to educate them, if you will, a little bit.
Yeah.
Got the opportunity to take some internationally to Canada as well. So just really tried to use my leadership in that town to open their minds, and not only just for their bodies, but, give them some goals.
That's good. And you had already said that being the oldest of 7 siblings, that was, there was a lot of responsibility on you naturally. But do you feel that that helped you be the protector in life, and that your nurturing side came naturally because you were the oldest of 7?
I think so. It was 8 years before I had my next youngest sibling born. I could say in those first 8 years, I'm just obeying, learning how to life, learning, keeping myself entertained. I mean, I lived on a mountain in the middle of nowhere. I would just like pull encyclopedias off the shelf and read, like just whatever a kid does, play outside. But yeah, when that first sister came along, I was kind of forced to be big sister. So, and I was old enough to, change diapers, feed her, help her take a bath. So it wasn't even like a question, if you will. So yeah, I think that highly contributed to, I take care of whoever I'm around.
Yeah, that's amazing. And in preparation for this conversation, you shared some information with me, and then you talked about pessimism. And so I do have a question around that. You said you hate pessimistic speaking and believe that what we speak can come to fruition. The question is, where did that conviction come from?
Ironically, it came from my dad, and then I've just seen it happen along the way. So my dad, you can think of a mountain man, over 6 foot tall, Polish, rough and tough and stuff. And I think he used to say, God damn it. And he was an atheist at first, and then he switched over into believing. But he had a period of life where he would say that word and he would just watch things fall apart. And then he kind of got convicted and he said, you know what, for a certain amount of time, I'm going to say, God bless it. And he started doing that, and he started just speaking positively, and it was a noticeable difference. And then he told his friend about it, and he had a very similar experience. And so from then on, I watched it happen. It was quite interesting, like just having that, oh, this is okay. Like we can adjust this way, or, I might be mad, but I'm going to bless it instead of curse it. So as things have evolved in my life and I've gone through things, or watched people go through their own, the way you talk about something, or if you start saying and catastrophizing and like going down all of these rabbit holes, I've noticed those things are more likely to happen. And I don't know if it's because maybe we're talking ourselves into it or just putting it out into the universe, but I refuse to lend power to the words now after my experience.
Yes. And you said it right there. It's both. You give power, because there's videos out there of Bruce Lee. I'm not sure if you're a Bruce Lee fan. I'm a huge Bruce Lee fan, where be careful what you say. And he says that you should always give yourself affirmations in the morning, because when you speak and you are spelling out. You are casting spells by spelling, and that's where it comes from. And what's really interesting, when you start looking into the root of words and how it is that words are formed and the real meaning behind them, like the old ancient meanings, you start to understand what is happening when you place that power in the right areas. Because when you speak something into life. You're speaking life into your own life, into others' lives, by what it is you say. Because there's the thoughts that we think, but here's the thing. We aren't those thoughts. We are the awareness of them, and we can choose what to do with those. But the things that we speak out, we're taking energy from inside of us, positive or negative energy, and then we are transferring that through our vocal cords and out into the world.
Yes.
Everything has a vibration.
Mm-hmm.
And when you speak that with intent, with presence, there's power there.
Yeah. And I can think of like, famous people who give those speeches where you're just like, oh, or the motivational videos that give you goosebumps, and it's like, why wouldn't negativity or pessimistic thinking give power to that other side just as well?
Exactly. That's something that I wish more people would really understand when they talk about negative things. It's okay to recognize and acknowledge things that are not favorable. And actually, before this, earlier this morning, I was having a conversation, and there was someone that said something that this never happens to me, was said. And the first thing, so I've trained my brain to recognize patterns and, how the power of bringing things into life. When you say things like never and always, you're attaching permanence to things. And so you reframe it. Instead of the whole situation was like, if you're calling into a call center and you get a hold of them right away and you say, oh, this never happens to me. Well, then you're going to continue that. Or you could say, this is the first time this has ever happened. And then that you turn something negative into a positive just by doing that.
Yes.
The more that we do those small things, the more our life as a whole then becomes better, because we're not looking at the little things that are, that little thing right there is negative. That little thing right there is negative. That other thing over there is negative too. No, we don't have to do that. We can flip the script.
That was one of the things I kind of went out on a limb when I did my Master Resiliency Trainer. We had to do teach backs, and I got the Find Positivity module, and I was like, oh, I got this. And I didn't really practice much. I didn't have time. But I did a scenario like, hey, it's a rainy day and I went through a story where I spilled coffee on myself. I forgot my umbrella, and I'm just like having an awful day. And I had the audience count off like how many awful things happened. And I think we got to like 6 or 7. But then I went back and I said, okay, well, let's find the positive. And we went well over whatever my negative was. It was like, well, I woke up today. Well, I'd still had some coffee, and, you know, we went through it all. And the trainer himself, he was like, I wasn't sure that was going to work out for you, but that was really inspiring, And so I completely agree. Like, find the positive.
Yeah. Even though, so humans, we have a negativity bias that is ancient, and it comes from our survivalness. Like, we innately are programmed to survive. So we look for the things that are dangerous. We look for the rustles in the bushes and the little sounds at nighttime that could be dangerous. And so those are things that we pay attention to. But we don't have to do that anymore. And, so we live in such an amazing time, because those pre-programmed ancient biological triggers of dangerous environmental cues, that is not something that we have to worry about by and large, because of how safe our society is in general. And sure, there are some cultures, there are some places around the country that are less safe than others, but by and large, we are pretty safe.
Yeah. No, I have had a lot of experience, and but not only in martial arts, but just, being around people. And I really love your point because, like, we can lock the door if we live in a safe neighborhood. We probably don't need to sleep on pins and needles. We can kind of relax in our own homes. Sure, go outside, be aware. But yeah, it just lower that level of stress down just a little bit.
Exactly. And that allows people to de-stress, keep that, normal elevated level of cortisol that people usually walk around in, and then bring that to a lower baseline, because you don't need to be stressed all the time. And with that, though, you have this thing where Sundays are like a preparatory day for you.
Yes.
Where you set things up, and like you're a planner and you have things laid out. So I want to dig into that. And you had mentioned that an 80% solution on Sundays for meals and workouts.
Uh-huh.
So that is such a practical expression of purpose right there. And so what does a Sunday rhythm for you, like, do for you mentally?
Okay. Yeah. I say 80% solution because I allow 20% for some things might happen, or maybe I don't figure out everything I want to eat, or I don't know how I'm going to feel by Thursday. Maybe I don't want to eat what I meal prepped, or I don't want to work out like I planned for. So on Sunday morning, if I haven't done it by Saturday night, I will go in and do my meal prep first thing. Like, okay, I'm going to eat these meals. This sounds good to me this week. And after that, I will make sure my kitchen's cleaned and ready to go for later that afternoon if I haven't done it, Saturday night. And then I'll go out, get the groceries, grab some lunch because I'm going to be cooking all day. So I'm not going to cook my lunch. So that's my treat. Get home, put the groceries away, relax for a bit because it's probably only like 1 o'clock by then. Maybe I pay bills if I have to do that, just not be on my feet for a bit. And then probably around 2 or 3 o'clock, that's when I'll start meal prepping. And I do as many things as I can cook at once, so that way I'm not in the kitchen all day. And then after that, I'll just portion everything up, throw it in the fridge. I'll usually try to pick a lunch to go that I can also eat later. I've been getting into the Hawaiian barbecue plate lately,
Ooh.
so I'll do like half of that for lunch and half of that for dinner, so I don't have to worry about anything. But if I don't do that, I'll just make a little bit extra meal prep and I'll eat that. But that to me allows me to be able to fully, go to work without having to worry about what am I going to get for lunch? What am I going to eat for breakfast? because if I start having the gaps in my nutrition, I can't train. My muscles will start rebelling and they're like, nope, we're tired. We don't have substance. So, I don't know how much you know about jujitsu, but going to class without nutrition is not an option. You just get gassed out and you can't go anymore.
Well, I have not done that myself, but I imagine it is a very, very endurance taxing exercise and discipline.
Yeah, and I mean, for the school that I go to, the first 45 minutes is a varying level. So if I had to compare it to something, it would be maybe like the first part of the PT test. Maybe like you do some push-ups, you do some sit-ups, you go for a run, But then afterwards, if you could just mingle cardio and strength all together, that would be your sparring. So you do that for like another 30 minutes.
Yeah. So doing all that stuff on Sunday, getting things prepped and readied, that really helps you live on purpose. And which is an amazing thing, because a lot of people, they look at purpose like it has to be dramatic. But for you, it's in the form of like meals, workout, and you had mentioned in the notes of getting ready for this conversation, things like piano and then staying illness free. So what does purpose look like on an ordinary Tuesday?
Tuesday? Sure. Well, alarms are set the night before, 2, just in case I want to snooze. No, I just get up and I don't have a rush morning, but I don't also get up to where I have like a lot of time either. I kind of have a pocket, if you will. So I like to read for a minute, whether I just check on Facebook to see if everybody's doing okay, or if I read my book. Get up, eat breakfast, drive to work. My drive, I typically will just try to jam out for a little bit or talk to somebody, whether it's a family member, friend. Get to work. I usually have what I do is like a priority list. And it depends on the season. If it's a busy season, I will actually have a physical, like, this is my to-do list. This is what has to get done today, this week. If it's not a busy season, I can typically kind of keep tabs of like, okay, I have to do these things today in my head. So there's a running joke, like I have sticky notes and like, hey, this is my priority list. And that's how I'm successful, to make sure that things don't fall off at work or even in my life. I have a work priority list and I have a life priority list. In fact, like this is my
Oh, that's fantastic.
my home one, right? And it's because I've noticed, especially for personal life, it's like, oh, I have this spare time. And then I have like 4 hours, say. But if I don't have an idea of something I want to do, or a few things, because depending on my energy, I might not feel like sitting at the piano. Maybe I feel like reading something I've been putting off to do, or maybe writing my book, or writing. So just something on cue that I want to do that matches my energy levels. And that way I don't think, okay, I only have 2 hours left before I have to go to bed. So yes, I run with the priority list most of the day. And again, like you said, they're just small things, but they make a big difference, because if I didn't have them, those things would fall off, or I'd be like, oh man, I forgot. Like I could have, worked on my book or worked on my piano. And that's how I keep my purposes, going forward.
That's good. And because we're all human, we have human moments. We can fall into the trap of social media scrolling and stuff. If you feel yourself, or when you feel yourself drifting towards that doom scrolling or stagnation, what do you do to pull yourself back? And how do you give yourself grace when those things happen?
Yeah, lately I will if I start noticing that to happen. I'm reading a really good series right now, so I'll pull myself off of social media and I'll go to my book, because it's like maybe I don't have the energy to get up and do something that I want to do, but the reading is better for my brain. like just really good clips and outlooks and stuff, and or just getting into the story. So kind of, Facebook has those algorithms that draw you in, that you don't need to really go down those negative thought trains and stuff. So yeah, when I start noticing that, that's how I pull back immediately. I'll go to my book, and then if it's like on the weekend where I have more time and I've been sitting for longer than say an hour or so, like then I kind of can feel it in my body. So I make it a point to get up, stretch a little bit, see how I feel, and maybe do something a little bit more productive. So
Yeah.
I did kind of keep a mental
What's the book
finger on it.
series?
Oh, it's called Shade's First Rule, and I I didn't know that I would actually really get into this book, but it's kind of martial arts based. Go figure. It is actually an RPG kind of format, but it's not too obnoxious, if you will. But it's been quite amazing, actually, because not only does it have like this adventure saga that you get led down, but the martial art piece has really brought in some interesting things because of my background. So the main character has this, he just starts from scratch. And I can think back when I was 10 years old, like, oh yeah, this is how I felt when I started martial arts, like kind of clumsy, kind of like, wow, this is cool, this is new, or this is what this is for. And as the book has evolved to like book 12, he's kind of evolved into like this deity status, just hardening and fortifying his body. But being in Taekwondo and now jujitsu for so long, and yoga, the kind of the points behind it has become this like everything is balanced, right? So strength training, having that internal balance, when you approach the world, when you think about internal balance, like, are you balanced mentally and physically? So it's kind of like taking me along this journey, kind of pulling out on those threads that I already have, but just haven't really realized. And so looking back at old me at 10 years old versus now me, where I'm strength training, doing my crazy cardio, doing jujitsu, and I go back to practice Taekwondo, it's been really interesting. I have a really similar feel to how his character's evolved, because when I do Taekwondo, it's not like, oh, this is hard to hold this stance anymore, because I do have that strength training now. So everything's more imbalanced. My mind is different. So it's been quite the journey. I highly recommend the series.
That's fantastic. You've touched on something there that is quite powerful, where you're going through the journey of reading through this character that starts off young and fumbling. And that's the thing that we do and are. We are, in order to learn anything new, you enact the role of the fool, where you are just, you don't know what you're doing. You fumble everything multiple times.
Yes.
And it's okay, because that's part of the process. And then you're thinking back like, yeah, I really wasn't that good at the beginning. Even though you took to it naturally, you still had to learn and get the mechanics down, get that mind to body connection, and understand the philosophy behind what it is that you were doing. And for a lot of people, they don't think about that is something that you endure and go through in every single thing that you learn that is new. And think about this too. You said 8 years old when your first sibling came around. Think about that sibling and all the other ones that followed afterwards. When they were babies, how much does a baby try and try and try and try before it's able to even crawl and then even walk? How many times do they fall down? How many times do they stumble? And yet, as adults, we're supposed to get things right away.
Yep.
Like somewhere along
Right
the
now.
line, we forgot to give ourselves grace that, and they're like, look, it doesn't matter if you are a newborn baby or if you're a 45-year-old person, you still go through the process. Your brain goes through the process of learning something new, because at the core of it, it is your brain's wiring, the new neuronal connections that are happening as you're doing something new. It feels like a struggle because that's what learning feels like. And I read the study that the uncomfortableness that you feel when you are actually learning something new, that it doesn't feel like that good in that process, you feel resistance, that is actually your brain creating new neural connections and forming that. That is the beginning process of neuroplasticity. And so, yeah, when you feel that uncomfortableness, that is just learning. Like,
Yeah.
this is what learning feels like. It's like, well, it doesn't feel comfortable. No, it doesn't for anybody, because that's part of learning. And then once you start building those connections, there's this, I'm going to get all nerdy for a moment. So you have the axons that are, the axon is the arm of your synapses, and wrapping around that is a fatty layer tissue called myelin. And in the process of myelination, as you do something more and more and more, that fatty tissue becomes stronger and stronger, and it strengthens. And think about a one-lane highway that's only like 35 miles an hour. Those electrical signals go back and forth, and it does it. Okay, it's doing it, but it's not doing it very fast or efficiently. But the more you do something, the stronger those connections get. It builds up a bigger network of neuronal connections, and at the same time, it strengthens the myelin sheath around those axons, which allows the single lane highway or the single lane road at 35 miles an hour then turns into a highway at incredible speeds. So you're able to do something faster. You become more in tune with your nervous system because the electrical signals go from your brain through your body, and when you are in alignment with that, then you're able to do the things. And you know this too with your training in martial arts. When you have that, you've done it over and over again, you do it so instinctually.
Yes.
That's when you know it's ingrained in your nervous system.
That's kind of achieving that automatic reflex, almost that holy grail that you want to be, just no mind kind of thing, where you just, it happens and you're like, yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that Bruce Lee level right there.
Mm-hmm. Ironically, when you think about doing anything, my dad was always like, if you do something, do it well. In martial arts, in life, that's kind of something I've always really tried to adhere by. And I have a funny story of, my training. I was actually training to do an international competition, and our coach was having us do a lunge punch. And we kept practicing these lunge punches, but for some reason, I didn't think about punching up. I was punching like straight ahead. Well, when you lunge and you punch, it's quite low. For some reason, in the next tournament, I think I slipped, or maybe I just ducked. I don't remember, but I lunge punched. It was a clear miss. It was automatic reflex. Like, this is exactly what you wanted. But because I wasn't practicing correctly, I should have been punching up, like totally missed the target. So it just really highlights the importance too of being purposeful in what you're doing. Like, hey, imagine, visualize, like this is why you're doing it.
Indeed. And that touches a good point too, because you can train and train and train, but if you don't train purposefully, intentfully, and even if you go slow, but if you go slow with precision, then that creates the instinctual, like you're going to do it like this every time. And the whole notion of practice makes perfect is not exactly accurate, because you can practice over and over, but you can do it badly. And what you're doing is you're practicing how to do it expertly, badly.
Yes,
So,
exactly. Hard lesson, but good lesson.
Indeed. Go slow, but be precise. And that's something that people, when they speak, some people get ahead of themselves and they don't practice what they want to say. People end up saying a lot of things that they perhaps later on regret, or, man, I shouldn't have said that. But if you slow down and think for a moment and pause before you say something, then then that is what should have been said and what was right to say, according to, this, scenario and everything. But in your resiliency training and doing things with the Air Force, have you come across situations where having conversations with people, it's really important to get them to slow down and then be mindful of what it is that they say because of the way that we present information, the way that we treat one another? I found that there's a lot of people who they'll say things and then they won't realize how it is that they're saying it because they want to be genuine, but they're not actually present when they're saying it. So it comes off as disingenuous.
I think one of the prime examples of that happened while I was at Goodfellow. I was an instructor there, and we were always so busy. We had about 45 to 50 instructors in the pit, is what we called it. We would always be running from the pit to our classrooms. And on the way past somebody, we would see another instructor and be like, "Hey, how are you?" Instead of taking that minute to really care and stop and listen, people would just be like, "Good," and keep on going. So I kind of made it a point to, if I was going to say, if I like, "Hey, how are you?" I would stop in the hallway and actually get like, "Are you good? Are you not good?" Just take that moment because, yeah, you can say good all day long, but they're not really good. And me and another instructor, he was awesome. He was he was a little brainy for some people's taste, but him and I had an extensive conversation on this. I was like, "Yeah, don't ask me how you are if you don't really intend to actually want to know. Like, the intent is not there. It's more of like an automatic, like, reflex, if you will. It doesn't matter."
Yeah, no, that's a great. You said he was too
Oh, brainy. He was brainy. He was like one of
brainy.
those. He was one of those guys who I could call him a math brain. Very logical, very almost like too scientific for most people to be like having a conversation with. Very smart guy.
I can relate to the being labeled as the brainy. I've learned over time in the process of academics and just personal research on things to wildly lower the scientific jargon to have conversations with people that actually connect on the level that I want to connect with. And while it's amazing to have deep, like, scientific-y conversations with people who have the same, like, let's say, academic background, for everyday people, that isn't quite the case.
Yeah.
And it's the everyday people where you really got to learn to communicate with them and check in. But I feel that even if you are really technical, you can still give them the number one thing that people need, which is presence. If they feel that you are listening, they know that you're listening, they feel heard.
That was something he would do too. He could check on somebody, he could lower that level. But if somebody was like, "Hey, how are you?" and kept walking, he would just be like, "Yep." And it made sense. Yeah, that was pretty funny.
That's good. That's a good way to avoid the superficial discussions.
Yeah, I mean, when you're that limited time, you have to pick and choose your battles. And ideally, being a team in the military, we should have enough teammates to pick up, I don't want to say pick up that slack, but not everybody is busy all the time where they can't take 60 seconds and be like, "Hey, how are you?" And really truly mean it and get that answer. One of the things I did for Air Force Wounded Warrior program is I went up to Wyoming to their guard base. They had just had a suicide, unfortunately. This was years ago. And I was asked to share my story for their mandatory resiliency day after that. And knowing what had happened, I kind of approached it differently. Um, I was standing on the bed of a semi trailer with a microphone, and I was like looking out all over these people, and I'm like, what am I gonna say? Like, how do I relate my story to help these people right now? Whether it's get help or whatever. And it just really brought me back to the basics. It was like check on each other. So what I had him do is I said, hey, just everybody real quick. I could see them clearly in their own groups. I said, hey, I want you guys to go find somebody that you don't know, ask them who they are, what their name is, what their favorite hobby is, and how they're doing. I said, you got 5 minutes, go. And so that's how I opened up my speech. You could just hear the chatter. They actually didn't even want to stop. So I got them, in a different click, if you will. And did my story, talked about mental health, that I had to go through while I was going through my treatments, and how that felt for me was uncomfortable doing that, but we got through that. And then at the end, the commander came up to me and he was like, I'm not sure what I expected, but it wasn't this, and I really, really appreciate you doing this, and um, this is what we needed, and I don't know, I can't tell you how many people came up to him, to their supervisors, to me, saying thank you for doing this, because my troop's going to go get help, and they're not scared anymore. So again, I'm checking on each other. So simple things like that I think everybody, especially in the military, I mean, we're all wearing the same uniform. Like, just see somebody, go say something.
Exactly. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm sitting here listening, and I get the chills when you said that the people, they went and got help because that environment was created to where that they felt comfortable to go get help. And that is so important for people to do. And you have this story to share, and everyone has a story to share. Yours is, very unique and powerful. And that's why you were asked to talk to these people, and you presented an opportunity for people to get out of the clique that they decided to sit with, and then get into a table, a setting where I don't know these other people, but then they started conversating. And it's an amazing thing what happens when people, they remove the barrier of the cliques, and they're open to listening to other people's stories and open to hearing other people's voices about their experiences. That is powerful. And that's actually a great segue into, I want to ask you about your cancer journey, but I don't want it to be something that is like, that's your story. That I want it to be more of the person that you became through it. And so my first question on that is, as a 2-time rare cancer survivor, what did that experience clarify for you about life?
That's a tough one, because I think before I got sick, I was this performer, care for everybody else kind of person, constantly worried about everybody else, but not myself. Um, I mean, I worried about myself, but it wasn't like take care of myself to the extent maybe one should take care of themselves too. So one of the things going through it, one of my favorite chiefs said was, first you got to take care of you, and then your significant other, and then your family, if that's what you have, and that didn't include exactly my job or my school or whatever, right? So that one made me reflect inward along the way. And then the second time, I did a lot of mental health work for a year. And I think it was just coming to terms with, like, life isn't guaranteed. Um, that was a big one, and it still is hard. Probably some of the biggest changes I've had is just peace, like trying to find more peace and relax and purposefully use my time that I do have here wisely, like not waste it. I think we all tend to waste time, um, sometimes a little too much time. And some things like I want to do, like go see the world, it's not always going to be an option. So just kind of doing what I can every day to make those goals a little bit closer is more near and dear to
Indeed.
my heart.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I think sometimes before, I would sacrifice my physical fitness stuff a little easier, um, for the job or for the significant other. And it's a little bit more important to me now. They don't know why I got sick, so I can't say, like, oh, I need to avoid this one thing. So I just have to be really careful about that to keep my internal balance, because I think the internal balance is just as good, as important as external. So I've learned a lot about, you know, different sides of the coin and in and out and, you know, where do I want
Things
to
are a
go? Where?
balance. And,
Yeah,
there's a saying of as above, so below, and as within, so without.
that's actually a quote in that book, Shades First Rule.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, it sounds like a book that I'm going to have to check out then.
I agree.
So, in that journey, what was it that you really stopped taking for granted?
I think probably time. I felt invincible before I got sick. My dad, he was Polish. We didn't go to the doctor unless something was cut off, we were dying. Like, you just didn't go. You were fine. But then when I got sick, it was like, well, actually, like, they don't know why I got it. And um, I don't know if I will make it through this, or I don't know if I will have good odds. I might not be here in 6 months. What do I want to do? So time became something a little bit more precious to me. Um, it made me realize that I might not live to, 80, 100 years old, because I always thought like, I'm going to live a long time unless I get hit by a bus, and that's just tragic, but unavoidable, Um, but I think illness really just puts into perspective, and I've seen it kind of happen along the way with some other, acquaintances of mine. Like when you get sick, some sort of chronic illness, whether it was, a gentleman I know, he had COVID and he got hospitalized and he was on his, like last leg and pulled out of it. I think everybody who's kind of had a brush like that, I think they really start to value the time, because again, tomorrow isn't guaranteed. So what do you want to do? And like, how can you set yourself up to, reach those goals as quickly as you can before your time comes? Like, are you going to be happy, fulfilled? Like,
Exactly. And so, what did you stop postponing because you valued time so much more and your perspective on time changed?
I I think I started with my fitness and health, really. Like, that was one of the top priorities that I stopped putting off, stopped compromising with. Like, I never really ate bad or say would like gain a lot of weight, but just being more purposeful with that, taking the time to do that to make sure like I gave myself, you know, a better chance at living longer, if you will, so I can meet the other goals, right? So that was a little bit of internal and external balancing that I did. And then like right now I am working on my finances, so I can start my travel, goals that I want to do. So getting all those straight, so I can start saving up for that. Um, Writing my book. I'm trying to write a book that kind of chronicles, some of the things we're talking about today and the experiences that I went through to, share with other people, because I think that's important too. You know, we go through these things and sometimes like me, we don't even know why. Like the doctors still are like, yeah, we don't know why you got sick. It's not genetic. You didn't get it from somebody. We don't have a direct correlation of, some substance that you came into contact with. So, just trying to use those experiences for good and, inspiring other people to, live their life now versus, I'll get to it in 5 years. Well, you might not have 5 years. So do it now.
Absolutely. And the thing is, we don't know what's going to happen, where it could be you or it could be someone that is very close to you, a family member could be the one getting sick. And it absolutely changes your perspective on what is truly important and where it is that you're spending your time and energy and your presence. Because if you go through life and you let it happen by accident, then your power is then foregone and given to everybody and everything else. But you have the power to shape your life today, because tomorrow doesn't ever exist, because tomorrow is always tomorrow. So start today and live purposefully, because as you experienced, there are things that happen to the human body that will test you, that will reshape the way that you look at everything.
Yeah.
And, I didn't share this with, in our initial talks, but cancer is a very, very deeply connected thing to my life too, where one of my kids, she got cancer at 2.5 years old. And I'll tell the story. I'll share the full story later on, but it was a very, very awakening experience. And it was an experience where you feel helpless because there's outside of being present and being there and showing strength as a parent, there's literally nothing else that you can do. And because all you want to do is make it better. And so having that facing that challenge, and it was a very long process. It was 2.5 years of treatment. And in the beginning, she actually lost the ability to walk because there was so much, it was leukemia. There was so much lymphoblastic cells in her bones that she couldn't bear the weight of her own little tiny body. And so she had to relearn to walk and stuff. And it was brutal. But that is one of those spaces. Cancer is one of those spaces that absolutely gives you a completely different perspective on life, meaning, and purpose. But also a deep appreciation just for life in general. And she's doing good these days, and is a strong warrior.
Good.
And with the biggest heart you will ever see. So it's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so your story is, pretty close to my heart for what it means to see a person go through things.
Well,
And no matter how old, could be a toddler, could be someone in their 20s and 30s, going through an illness like that of any type of cancer is brutal.
yeah, unfortunately, I've seen it, whether I'm sitting at MD Anderson or Wills Eye Institute, the person next to you, they're getting diagnosed. They're getting the bad news again. The mom's holding the baby, like it's awful. Being older and having it and not having a reason, like you do the mental battles, like what did I do wrong? Why did my body fail? Like there's just so many things that is terrible about it, That would be, it doesn't run in my family, so I had no close experience with it until myself, So it's definitely one of those illnesses where I'm like, where they say cancer? Like I totally get behind that.
Yeah. So, when someone is going through something life altering, what do people often say that is not helpful, even if they mean well?
I kind of started not liking the I'm sorry or the attempts at sympathy or empathy, I guess you could say, or like I could never go through that. It's like I feel like I have to be like, this sucks. This sucks for me. Um, it sucks for you because you know me and you don't want me to go through this. So let's talk about something different, or like, let's talk about something we're going to go do after this, or, let's address it from a different angle. Empathy, sympathy. Oh, I could never go through that. I hate that one. Part of my treatment, yeah, it was tough. Like the first time the doctor was like, after my eye treatment was like, "Hey, yeah, you're gonna have to have shots in your eye." I said, "I'm gonna have to have what in my eye?" And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna be put to sleep, right?" And he's like, "No, you're gonna be awake. We do this all the time." And I was like, "No, not on me, you don't." And he's like, "Yes, let me go get you some Xanax." And I was like, "You better give me something else too, right?" um, but no, like, yeah, I had to have shots in my eye, and no, it wasn't pleasant. But when the doctor says, "Hey, we're gonna do this thing so you can see better," you're gonna grit and bear it, right? Like you're gonna do it, And so somebody's like, "Oh, I could never do that." And I was like, let me tell you what. Let me tell you what. You're gonna find a way that you and the doctor can get this thing done, whether it's giving you some Xanax and numbing your eyeball, like you're gonna do it. So I think that's one of the things that irritate me is like people set themselves up short, like
Hmm.
without even thinking about it all the time. And it's like, why are you doing that? It's not only just you telling me like, oh, I could never do that. What else are you saying? Oh, I could never do that. Could you imagine a world where people were like, oh, I could do that?
Yeah. Flip the script. Stop saying, I could never do that. Well, of course, you're never going to do it if you keep saying you can never do that. And it's also not helpful. It doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve the person you're saying it to. So, people, stop saying I could never do that. So, it's, and also, people don't know what they are capable of until they're in that situation.
Yep.
You don't know what it is that's going to come out of you, the type of courage, the type of bravery that is required to face certain things in life, to do the thing that you must do, that you have to do in order to get to the next step. There is courage. There is bravery inside of all of us. And when we are faced with a situation that requires that to come out, people are surprised at what they can do.
They find the grit, you know?
Yeah.
So.
So those are things that people said that weren't really helpful. But what did help?
Just treating me like I was still a person. Like, hey, how are you doing? Oh, I don't feel so good today. Oh, yeah, I bet. Like, that sucks. Hey, we're doing this thing today. You want to go eat lunch? Or, you know, this is new with me. Just kind of getting the focus off of what is going on. And I don't want to call it avoidance. I just want to call it more like normalcy, if you will. It was kind of funny. My master sergeant I was in honor guard when I went through my breast cancer round, and he saw me getting so sick, and he didn't treat me any different. He like let me come into work, and we would have our convos, and I would check in with him. And then my immune system got to the point where it was like, yeah, I probably shouldn't be around people. And I told him like, hey, the doc's like saying I probably shouldn't, be at events and do these things anymore, and put me on a doctor's note. And he's like, that's really good. I didn't want to say anything, but I'm really happy to hear that you're gonna, take some time for you. And it was not this forced thing. It wasn't a guilt thing. It was just, he let me, fill it out for myself and not make me feel any different or worse or guilty about anything. And that was probably one of the most wonderful things that a person could do, for another person going through that.
Absolutely. How hard was that for you to really step away from work and focus on taking care of yourself when your immune system was at the point where like you really need to focus on just letting your body heal?
It was truly awful. I have more grace with myself now than I did then. It was one of the hardest things I had to learn, going through this. So I was always like, oh, I got to be at work. I got to be doing the things to earn my paycheck. And it was something I touched on actually with my mental health therapist while I was going through it. And I found out I was really unbalanced. So this comes from childhood. My dad, was like, we're gonna work, 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 and then we get a little break, and then we're gonna work, work, work. And so it was like, in order to earn a break, I had to work this much in my brain. And she goes, "Do you though? You're an adult. Like, do you? Like, why do you feel this way?" And we kind of dug into that, and I was like, oh, well, she's like, if you don't feel like working because you're sick, why are you trying to? And I'm like, I don't know. It's just the way I was raised, I guess. And so I had to be okay with that new reality of like, I can't work. I have to sit and heal. Like, that is my work right now. And we kind of came across this thing of like, I didn't feel worthy of that. And it kind of became my mantra. Like, I was just laying on the floor super sick, and I would just kind of repeat it like, I am worthy. I am worthy. I am worthy. And it sounds silly, and sometimes I still have to repeat that to myself because of that imbalance that I grew up with. But it has made such a big difference in giving myself a little bit of grace, kind of overcoming that childhood imbalance, because I am such a hard worker, goal oriented, and all of that. And ironically, it's 7 years later, and I just went through a really difficult time. And I was speaking with the chaplain, and he's praying and he's saying the words, and then all of a sudden he goes, "And Jessica, you are worthy." And it shook me out of it, and I said something, and he goes, "Yeah, I don't know why I said that, but I think you needed to hear it." And I was like, "I know why you said it, because that was my mantra from 7 years ago, and I needed a reminder," So for kind of bringing it back to that cosmic interconnection, I was just like,
That's powerful.
yeah.
And it's a good solid reminder that yes, you are worthy. Every person is worthy. Stop being the person who always has to work so hard that you break yourself down, body, mind, spirit. It is okay to take care of yourself. And if that means that you have to lay down, take the weight off your shoulders, and then just be. No expectations whatsoever. Just be. I got knocked down February 1st and with influenza A, and I even got the flu shot, and it knocked me down for a solid week. And like yourself, I'm the type of person that is just always doing something. And if I don't have that forward momentum to do something, then I feel like I'm not worthy of. I have these things. I feel it. And so I'm doing better at allowing myself to rest, regain, and just to be. And we are, we are human beings, not human doings. So we
Yeah.
need to be more.
It's so hard. I know.
Yeah, we could all have more peace in our life when we learn to simply be.
That's been one of my latest lessons, just let it be. Like, It's going to be fine. Just don't overthink it. Just, do what you need to do and engage how you need to engage, but be a little bit more relaxed and at peace. So, I've been through all of this stuff and I still find things that I obviously still struggle with. So, I'm like, I'm not perfect and I go crazy, on some days too, but I think if we can remember to come back and just sometimes be and have that grace, I think we're probably doing better than we could be doing.
Indeed. So, surviving cancer, did that make you more urgent, more grateful, more disciplined, or all three?
Mm. Yeah, all three. I can tell you a distinct level of gratefulness that happened almost immediately after both cancers in different lights. I remember, especially after my second one, going through the chemo and stuff, like just on my way to work, I would have to walk like 10 minutes from a gate to a building. And I was stationed in Colorado at Buckley. And it was cold. It was winter. And I remember like freezing my butt off, but I'm like walking. And I just remember like breathing the clean air and I see the mountains, and I'm like, man, that's so gorgeous, and just clearing my mind and just how beautiful that moment was versus before where, you're rushing, you're thinking about your day, you're already like in your work and you're not taking that time to just really appreciate nature for that 10-minute walk. So I started like purposefully like bringing that gratefulness into my daily life. Like, what am I grateful for? Like, can I take a moment and admire the sunrise, or the flowers are so pretty, just stuff that unfortunately in this 21st century, like we would rather scroll on our phones and miss, or just kind of be in our minds about what's about to happen instead of like being in that present moment. So I do try to practice that a lot more now than I did before.
Absolutely. People are so programmed to have this thing in their hands and then just be scrolling nonstop. And if we put that away, you said you had a 10-minute walk from the gate to the building. You started to take that 10 minutes and then you turned it into something where you can appreciate the nature and the mountains, how beautiful they are, and the crisp, clean air. And as a mountain person, growing up in northern Nevada near Lake Tahoe, we have the Sierra Nevada mountains, pine trees. At Lake Tahoe, it's 8,000 feet. Down in the valley at Carson City, it's like 4,600 feet.
Yeah.
And it's just crisp, clean air in the wintertime. It's amazing.
Yes.
And you look, you're right at the base of the mountain in the valley. And then there's these really tall mountains. And in the wintertime, they're covered with snow. It is one of the most beautiful scenes. And I've never been to Colorado to see the mountains over there, but I imagine it would be something similar. And it is something that anytime that I see the very few times in Arizona, in the Phoenix Valley here, where I've seen snow at the tops of they're called the San Francisco mountain range. And I'm reminded that I really need to get back to the mountains so I can see this again, because it's something that's truly just amazing to see. But you took that 10 minutes and then you're like, start appreciating the beauty that it was all around. And if more people would take that, just a couple of minutes, even if it's a drive to work, take the drive to work, try it with no music.
Yep.
And just see if you can appreciate just being. And if you drive to work, say, if you know that you hit, say, a train stop, and that is a typical stop where you are going to be in traffic for at least a couple of minutes, that is an opportunity to think about all the things in life that you are grateful for and replenish your system.
No, I think that's There's so many little things we can do that have power in our days that we tend to ignore. And I think part of it's our culture, part of it's bad habits. Yesterday we actually had a pro dev day at work, and this master sergeant was big on the little things, and just a reminder of like how you can make, you know, everyday things into some sort of fun or whatever. So he put a word up, indomitable spirit, on the board. And anytime anybody said indomitable, he would do like a little drum on the table, and everybody picked up on it and started doing it, And so we have these things, we have these moments in time, but we're just always too worried about the past, the future. We're not in the present. We're addicted to our phones, to our internet. I think it takes a real conscious effort, sometimes, or unfortunately, sometimes some tragic illness or wake up reality call to kind of like reevaluate sometimes. And I think that's unfortunate. So I hope things like, hearing my story or somebody else's story can help people be like, oh, actually, I should take that moment. That's right. I think it is difficult, to kind of put yourself in those shoes and kind of have that same wake up call, but I don't think it's impossible. There's books out there like The Power of Fun, she goes in and addresses, the cell phone and how it's fake fun. We're getting these dopamine hits in our brains, but it's not real fun. It's just a cover, if you will. And she breaks down all the science, and she goes into what these psychologists and psychiatrists say about it and how it's like the world's biggest experiment, if you will. But then she kind of dives in like, what's real fun? And she kind of gets back into this present moment interconnectedness, joining a guitar class, joining, a dance class. And it's opening up those possibilities to live in the present, have these spontaneous moments of like, when you're just talking with somebody and you spontaneously laugh about something that happened because it was absolutely hilarious. You wouldn't get that if you'd been scrolling on your phone. So she kind of explores those avenues, and I think that's something that people should really, take a look at.
I like that. Yeah. And people should have more spontaneous fun in their life too. Laugh more, do more fun things, play loud music and just dance around the house. You don't have to, you're not performing for anybody. You're just being and having fun. And in fact, I was doing that this morning, and
Nice.
It was amazing. Just getting ready for the day and, turn up music really loud and just enjoying life. And that's
you said
being
something there
present
about,
in the moment.
I was going to say, you said something there about, performing. We put our daily masks on, to go to work, or even, like what our social sphere has put on us, like how to perform around people, whether it's your significant other or whatever, what their expectations are. And you just kind of put them on slowly. And I don't think people realize how deep those things can go. So I love your point of like, just have fun. Like I went to NCOA, and I was riding with a friend, at the time. And he was like, what, just sing, like, sing in the car. And I was like, I can't sing, I sing bad. And that was because somebody else had, told me like, oh, you should just let the people who sing it, And I was just like, okay. So I stopped singing, around people in the car. And then I started realizing like, why did I do that? I do like to sing, whether it's out of key or off tune, like, what does it matter? But he really like helped me pull that layer off, again.
That's good.
So, and how many other people have, just accepted the performance mask, if you will.
People don't need to perform. They just need to be themselves and have the courage to do so.
Yes.
It's okay to feel that nervous about being yourself, because society has programmed people that you have to be a certain way, that you have to put on a mask and be strong and cover up your emotions and don't have emotions, especially for men. And no, that's not okay. Be you, whoever you are, and express yourself. If you want to sing in the car, if you're tone deaf, so what?
Exactly.
Yeah. So you had mentioned that you've done a lot of mental health therapy yourself. What does therapy really help you understand about yourself that discipline alone could not teach you?
Mm. That one's interesting because I've done therapy a few times now. I'm back in therapy for some other stuff, not medically related, but it's really kind of helped me label things more appropriately. Where, the first thing you do when you do anything, you kind of identify, like, this is what this is. You know, when people first invented math, they had like two sticks, and it's like, okay, we're going to call this a one and we're going to call this a two. So going through therapy, I'm feeling these emotions and I don't even know what to call them because, like I said, my dad was like, you're not dead, you're not dying, and nothing's cut off. So you're not going to the doctor. He's just a very straight line guy. Um, so I get into therapy and I'm like, I don't know what I'm feeling even. So it's like, are you anxious? Are you angry? Are you sad? Are you a combination of these things? So like that was kind of my first leg of the journey was like learning how to label things. So then I'd be like, okay, now why are you feeling these things? And we'd go down that road and it was like, okay, well, this is why, like, for example, I'm sick, I'm losing my hair. Well, that's to me, I would say this, like, okay, well, that's dumb. Hair is just hair. And she would be like, well, no, that's your identity. Like, that's part of it. Like your blonde hair is this length and that's what you've always known. And that's how you've always looked like. So yeah, it's no reason why you're upset. And I'm like, oh, so it wasn't just dumb to feel that way. So kind of understanding like those things during that time. And then more recently, it's been like not only identifying the emotion, but being okay with the emotion and then kind of like undoing some of the things that have gotten me into that with the labeling, the sorting things out, and then kind of understanding my character a little bit better. So, one of the things I recently learned was like the term lethal loyalty. So you're just like doing and doing and doing and doing, even though it might be hurting yourself. So just kind of learning a little bit more of that and like how actually I have papers over here. One of the other things is like your past and how much it affects you. So you have like different people on your island. You have like exiles, firefighters, and managers. And these like individual, not personalities, but like these individuals on your island and how they influence. And these are created from your past, right? So you have like the managers who manage all of the emotions that are coming up, and this is how they do it and this is why they do it. And the firefighters are like, oh, everything's okay, and like kind of makes the situation better through fake means, whether that's scrolling or buying or whatever. And then your exiles are like where I told you guys about my dad was like, you work, and then you take a little break. But that's my homework for this weekend. So to kind of like see who my people on my island are. So just kind of getting those labels and identities so that way I'm aware and then able to manage and rebalance all of that again has kind of been some of the biggest parts, I think, for me for my therapy journey and why I kind of like really have this value in taking the time to do it, because there's one type of therapy where you can go and you can just kind of like talk about what's happening and kind of like get it off your chest. But I think there's another type of therapy where you are identifying, you are figuring out why you are the way you are. Because then once you're aware of it, now you have a little bit more control over these things and can manage all of this a little better and kind of be more at peace. So that's where I'm at in my journey.
I do have a follow-up question to what we just talked about. And like it has to do with martial arts and the military. Martial arts teaches you control. The military teaches you endurance. And therapy teaches awareness. But how have those three shaped you differently?
These all have kind of gone hand in hand more or less. I'll say the therapy was probably the outlier. Maybe I don't want to call it a linchpin, but I'll say it was a big piece to kind of keep everything working right, or get it back on track. Martial art, being so young, I started at 10 and I kept going right up until the point I joined and still continue. That has its own, like, yes, discipline, yes, sir, no, sir, body awareness, all these things. But it was surprising how much the rank and file system, if you will, fit into the military structure. So I came in at 26 into the military and, kind of running that business, doing the martial arts thing and everything. And so it was really easy for me to understand, like, okay, this is how you march rank and file. This is what they're looking for. So I just saw all the patterns and they stacked a lot, as well as an endurance piece, like between my upbringing with my dad, work, 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 and then the martial arts, work, work, push through sparring matches, you're gassed, but you're still going. So the endurance piece just kind of followed along, if you will, when I got into the military. Um, but then the therapy piece kind of was the internal balancer of the whole equation. So I could honestly say I was out of balance before therapy, absolutely 100%, between martial arts and my military experience to that point. Um, it was 3 years in. I think I was getting close to the 3-year mark when I had my second round where the doc was like, hey, you are going to go to therapy while you're going through this illness. So I was 29 and going to my first mental health session in my life. That was a shocker. Uh, I remember telling the therapist, like, I'm not going to cry. She's like, okay,
I've heard that one before.
sure. And then I'm just like bawling, I'm just like sobbing. And I was like, okay, well, that was unrealistic, you know? Um, and so kind of going through that journey, with her really unlocked some pieces during that time of my life, spanning from childhood up through the military, and it made things operate a little bit better going forward with that. So I could say they're all interlinked in some form or another.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We go into these things, and if we sit down, regardless of how young or old we are, the first time with the therapist and say, oh, no, I'm not going to cry. And then you really get into your emotions and then just let it all out.
Yeah.
And you know what? That is what we should be doing all the time, because we shouldn't be bottling anything up inside of us. We are human beings who feel, and some people feel more deeply than others, but we still feel.
Mm-hmm. That was one thing that was really difficult for me for my particular childhood was, not showing that emotion because we were expected to be tough, country town, small town military daughter, like, you're going to be tough. We're going to do this thing, don't show that emotion. Don't talk back, So all of that just always, sat there and it was so heavy, I'm not going to cry, just heavy.
Yeah. What is the difference between resilience and simply surviving?
Mm. Surviving is kind of, I like to think about, you're just kind of, your hair's on fire and you're just putting out the dumpster fires the best you can, and your hair's like all frazzled and you're probably not in a great mood and not pleasant to be around, but you're doing the things that you have to do. Resiliency, I kind of think of like, you're still doing the things you have to do. Your hair might be on fire a little bit, if you're in that kind of situation, but you have the wisdom to know, like, hey, if I think positively about this dumpster fire, it's not going to suck as much, like embrace the suck. Everybody hates and loves that phrase, but it's true. Find the positive, find the good. Take the 5-minute cat nap if you can, even if it's on your, superintendent's couch, and then work the rest of the day you got to work. But having that grace to go in there and that bravery to just, I've done it. Like, I was like, ma'am, I want to lay on your couch. They tell you it's there and then people don't use it, So I'm like, hey, I'm going to use your couch for 5 minutes and just breathe. So I like to say surviving is just kind of not utilizing all the tools that you have. Maybe you don't know you have them, whereas resiliency, like, not just day to day, but like in those tight times, you can still pull on those threads of like, hey, I want to take 5 minutes because I have 5 minutes right now to reorient it before I have to go put out this other dumpster fire.
Absolutely. And recognizing it's like, hey, I have got 5 minutes right now. I'm going to go into a space where I know I can calm my nervous system and then simply let the stress off of me. There's not enough people who they think that they have to be go, 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 go all the time. And like, I don't even have a minute to much. Nope. I don't have any time at all. Yes,
Yep.
you do.
Yeah. Oh, I got to check this email right now. I'm like, that email is going to be there in 5 minutes.
Yep. There is rarely ever a situation where you can't take 5 minutes to calm your nervous system, because the thing is, the body keeps score and it will tell you when it's had enough. And there are people who will not listen, myself included, years ago, where it will just say, nope, enough's enough. This is what I'm going to do to you. And then you're forced to look at things differently. But if you consciously take the time and understand that what is an emergency? If it is threatening life, limb, some big property, anything like that, address it right then and there. Otherwise, generally, you can take 5 minutes to calm down if you need it. And by calm down, I mean, allow yourself to lower your heart rate, lower your blood pressure. There's a thing called the physiological sigh.
Yes.
And that's 2 quick breaths in so that you open up all of the airway pockets inside of your lungs, and then a slow, deep breath out. Mm-hmm. And that slow breath out lowers the heart rate. But those 2 rapid breaths in brings in that oxygen and it calms the system. You do that several times in a row. If you do that for 5 minutes straight, yeah, I don't care if you just ran a mile, you will be nice and calm.
Yes. My therapist actually recently just taught me, we talked about that, but she said it also kind of emulates when you cry and you take that breath when you're really just in it. And she's like, it's similar to that. It's just releasing all of those emotions. I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. So yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, it definitely does. And then if people have like a blood pressure monitor, they can, if they're feeling really kind of on edge and hyper and where they just can't calm down, they have to keep moving. Check your blood pressure, check your heart rate, then do this practice for 5 minutes, then check it again and see the difference. And then see like, yes, this is backed from real science. This is what the body does. It knows what to do. And we gave it a name, and we recognize that there is an innate part of us, like when we're crying, and kids do it all the time. Like they're really, like they're vocal about it, and you can hear it. Adults, we tend to forget. We have this thing where we put up these masks and we forget how much we already know how to calm ourselves.
And that was something that, I'll bring it back to Goodfellow with the instructor cadre. It was like, we were on fire all the time. And, any military member, kind of maybe in the situation where we would get these emails that would come from the wing, from the group down to the squadron, and our emails would get flooded like 200, 300 by the time you were there for 3-4 year tour. Like, you were just in all these email chains. So many of them were just like repeating, but if you didn't check your email, you would just get like this backlog, so everybody was like not only teaching, dealing with fires from students, leadership, and then maybe this one from the wing that didn't get forward is like, oh, by the way, tomorrow you have to have all this due, oh, and by the way, write your EPB too. It was this constant barrage on top of teaching. And so you had all of this happening, and then you had teaching fatigue, which is a real thing. So anytime you're in a position where you're just, constantly on podium, teaching, talking, giving feedback, like you get tired, whether you're the most extroverted person or not. So we were going through all of this. Obviously they still are down there, but about a year and a half in, my good friend that I would sit next to, he said, Jessica, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, why? And he goes, you're not smiling. And I was like, oh, that is a problem, because if I'm not smiling, something is wrong, Forever optimist. So I really started reflecting, and then I was like, I knew people around me were like falling out, but it was to the point a year and a half in, and I still had at least a year and a half to go. And I'm like, if I'm not smiling right now, where am I going to be at in a year and a half? So I started really digging into the problem. Even with my limited time, I made it a point, and I talked to the medical group and got some data, and I talked to those around me and got some more data. And with my master resiliency trainer, I ended up getting an audience with the commander at the time, and I said, hey, I think this would be a really good idea. And I pitched her the resiliency room based off of all my training. And so I pitched a space where the lights would be dim, there would be massage chairs and a couch with like sand garden, Buddha board type stuff, and then a couple recliners in another small space. And then I had like timers that were like really loud to wake people up, because something else that was happening is a lot of these instructors, they were in that time frame where they had young children. And so they were just exhausted. They were getting woken up in the middle of the night to take care of the sick kids, or just the kids that couldn't sleep, or the babies. And they were just toast. She's like, no, I think that's a great idea. So she allotted some money out of the budget. And I built this resiliency room. The problem was the culture of, no, I have to do this. I have to check my email. I have to do this. So I actually had to get the commanders and leadership on board saying, it is okay for you to go for 10, 15 minutes into this room and take that 5-minute, that 10-minute. The massage chairs had 15-minute programs on them. Like, go sit and take a moment and chill. And like, if you're dead, take that cat nap for a second, so that way you can, teach at your best. And so that was a real hard culture shift. That took a lot of data. Like I said, like, pitching a project like that, I had to have medical data from the med group. But yeah, so it's not just I have to do this thing sometimes. Sometimes it's a team thing. Like, we have to do this kind of thing, and you have to get that buy-in through the data. So, but yeah, that's my other like side project / outlook on things. Like, sometimes, yeah, you do feel like, well, I got to check all these emails, but you got to shift the culture a little bit too.
Absolutely. The more we can work on shifting the culture, one work center at a time, one squadron at a time, one wing at a time, then we'll be able to let the greater Air Force, the greater DOW, see that people need these spaces, these moments to unwind from the chaos and get a little bit of peace so that they can come back refreshed. Because if you are constantly working people to the point of mental exhaustion, of teaching fatigue, and they don't have that reprieve, because the mind and the brain, they consume, especially when you're teaching, it sucks up so much of your energy. And yeah, there's a lot that goes into teaching. There's a lot of you that goes into teaching. the way that you teach, paying attention to the students. And if you put any real effort into teaching, yes, it's going to be an exhausting endeavor because you're putting you into it and you're making sure that you're taking care of the students. But who's taking care of you? How are the environments created so that you're getting taken care of mentally, physically, spiritually, all of that? And socially too, is the social environment for teachers, for the instructors set up so that you can unwind, but there's this, I have to check my email or else.
Yeah.
Or else what?
Yeah. You missed a due date. That should have been sent out 2 weeks ago. Oops.
Yeah. There
And
are also other avenues of sending out notifications too, besides email.
And that was one of the
phone
things,
call.
you know. Yeah, that was one of the things that was talked about too. I was like, we have 2 meetings a week. Just hold the info, you know, get it out sooner, hold the info. But I think people just get in the rut of, well, it's done this way. We always do it this way, even though it kind of works. We could be doing it so much better, but we just get locked in because of change. Change is hard no matter what area of life it's in, you know. But unfortunately, it's hurting our members because, you know, before that room happened, I don't know how many times where it's like, oh, I need to work out, but I'm not going to work out. I'm exhausted. Whereas, you know, after that room, they'd go sit in that massage chair. You know, 15 minutes later, they're like, whew, I feel like I can actually go work out. You know, they release some of that tension and that brain fog out, you know, and so there's a lot of physical results that happen when your mental state's a little better too. So
Exactly. If you're taking care of yourself mentally, that's where everything begins. Take care of yourself mentally, then you can take care of yourself physically, you can take care of yourself spiritually, all of that. It all starts with the mental. And I want to talk real quick about how you've seen men's mental health from multiple angles, personally, painfully, but then also in the environments like the Wounded Warrior Program and NCUA. And what happens when men don't tend to their minds and what becomes possible when they do.
yeah, this one was part of the reason why I'm in therapy now. For men who don't tend to their mental health or think it's valuable, and they are not naturally in that optimistic lane, if you will, or in that balanced, maybe their home life growing up kind of set them up for failure on this one, but they're not taking care of those problems. So my personal experience was rough. So I think it can present I think a man can present normal functioning, like, you know, day in, day out. They can do their job, they can go to work and stuff. But the more time you spend around that person, I think is when you're going to start noticing like they're stuck. So stuck telling that same story and how it ended badly, or the story shifts to like, well, it wasn't their fault, it was this thing, or so sometimes taking accountability. This all kind of starts snowballing, is from what I've seen, is to just like in this stuck state of almost a victimization, like, woe is me, but they are kind of just like, what's the point? Like, why do I have to almost start over? And it's not like they're really actually starting over. It's just like they just need to start. And so it's like their start function has malfunctioned at this point. So I know I'm kind of being vague, but it's just this cascade of like not taking care of these past incidences and kind of finding where they could have taken ownership, they could have done things differently, and then finally like laying that to rest and just taking that lesson and moving forward kind of starts creating this toxic snowball of like, oh, well, it's not my fault, or I don't know what to do, or blame shifting, and things just become really muddled. And it's like, well, why didn't you do that? Or, well, it's because of this. Well, you could have done that, and they didn't, you know, and they just, it's almost like a quagmire of just, stickiness, if you will. And it's really unfortunate because then this starts building a space where people around them start questioning, depending on the level, like, did I remember that right? So now we start getting into like the toxic gaslighting. We start getting into like, it's not my fault, it's your fault, or you moved that, or and so now it's starting to affect those personal relationships very negatively, where it's like, does it really matter if I picked up the glass and moved it over here? Not really. But it's a big deal, so these big past events start translating into these little things that become way blown out of proportion when it was just a small thing. So um, that's where I kind of say it's a cascade. So an avalanche, starts with like a pin drop and then it just flows. So you want to catch that before it becomes this avalanche and you're at the bottom of it waiting for it to crash on you. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what I think about mental health, right? Like the sooner you can get in and get whatever's really bothering you, whatever that big significant event is or emotion is, identified and kind of figure it out and balance it, lay it to rest the best you can and learn from it. Now you kind of quelch. Maybe it's just a little shift in the snow and it's not like this wave that's about to crash and hit you. In contrast to that, more recently, I've kind of been around some men who have taken care of their mental health. When I went to NCOA, hearing more what's normal. They talk about their wives or their significant others if they had them, The way they talked about it was a lot more different. And I was like, oh, okay, this isn't normal, And then I started like picking up the pieces of like, well, this hasn't been a safe space, or they don't like, they listen to their wives, or like, hey, honey, like, let me do this for you. Like, I will cook for you because you've done this, And so it was more balanced, more loving, more integrated. Like, no, they still have their own problems, but they've dealt with them, and these little things that cascade into big outbursts when they're not taken care of, they don't exist because they've acknowledged them and they know how to deal with them, and it's more balanced again. And it was just really eye-opening to me of like, no, this is important. Like, if I and it's a little bit of biology too, because I think between men and women, like a man will probably be more prone to anger with the testosterone and provider kind of mindset. So I think it's more like it can be more aggressive if things aren't taken care of, versus maybe a woman, maybe we're like crying, or maybe we just are like like label, we'll leave that label out. But this unhealthy like things that start happening turns into aggression, where the woman is like, okay, I need to pull in. And that's where we start getting like the censoring, like, what can I say? Um, he wants to know about my day, but how much time do I have? You know, did I put this thing up right? And so now we're having to like check everything we do versus just existing, and kind of going back to our conversation of like let it be, So what, I loaded the dishwasher a little bit funky, right? It's not a big deal in the big scheme of things, but it, because we haven't taken care of all of this other stuff, it really has become. So hearing those things at NCOA, having a better relationship just now with some guys in my life, I'm like, oh, that wasn't normal. This is what more normal should look like, if you will. This is what caring and safe and protective should look like. What an eye-opener. Night and day. They
I'm glad
joke.
that you got that opportunity to see the differences, the stark differences there. And, generally when people, in personality terms, people that are sensitive to negative emotion, so in personality, according to the Big Five, so neuroticism is broken down into volatility and withdrawal. People who are, when they get upset, or there's heightened emotions. People who are outwardly volatile, the angry ones, the aggressive ones, and stuff like that. And that's for both men and women. And then the other side is withdrawal, people who really close down and then they stop speaking, and they want to run away from the conversation right away. That's the withdrawal in them. And people, it's on a spectrum. People can be low or they can be high in that. And at the core, though, regardless of where a person lies on that spectrum of volatility or withdrawal for neuroticism, it is up to the person to tend to their unhealed wounds from their past so that they can be in the now and not treat people like garbage. It is the past traumas that are what are swaying a person, influencing a person to behave in manners where they are seemingly needing to be in control of everything, where this wasn't done exactly the way I wanted it to, and now everything's bad.
That's hard. It's so hard.
One piece at a time. It's important for everybody, men and women, whenever something comes up and there is an issue and it's behaviorally, emotionally, spiritually, anything, face it if you can in that moment. Go as deep as you need to. Peel back the layers to find out what the actual root cause is. And then here's the thing, Elsa, let it go. Release the shame, release the tension, and release the burden that has on you. Because if you don't, it will control you.
Yeah. Funnily enough, too, like some people can do that. They can identify it. But then even though they have the label and they identify it, they just let that go and it keeps coming back. And I think that's a real shame because for me, it was harder to identify the emotions and why. But when I got to it, I was like, oh, okay, like, let's work on this, you know? So I would almost plead, you know, like, if you can identify it, like, oh, this is because my dad did this. Well, like you said, let it go. Like, why? You know it's bad. You know this is why you did it or do it. You know, stop doing it. You don't like it. So yeah, that one just boggles my mind. Like, I can understand it to a point, but at the same time, I'm like, man, you know, you did almost all the work. Like, just do the final piece, you know?
Finish it out.
Yeah.
You need to close the loop.
Mm-hmm.
And the brain doesn't like open loops. And that's why people keep returning to the same thing. Why does this keep happening to me? Why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep treating people like this? Because you haven't closed the loop yet. And there's several different ways to do that. You can write they're called like ceremonial type releases, where you take something, write it down by hand,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can either shred it up, you can burn it, or you can throw it away, whichever feels most appropriate to you. Some people will like, well, that feels silly. I'm like, so it's not supposed to be logical. It is something that is spiritually connected to you. And then that's the thing that like people got to realize, like, we are so much more than what we have been programmed to think that we are. Write it out to its entirety and all the detail, all the nitty gritty stuff. Burn it, rip it up, then burn it, shred it, throw it away.
Yep.
But what you're doing is that you're taking it out of you, out of your mind, out of your heart, and putting it down on paper. And then you're allowing it to be transformed into something else. It no longer serves you. So there it goes.
Yep. It's very powerful. I can't think of the name of this book I read, but another cancer survivor, she had it back in I want to say it was 80s, I think. And she kind of takes you along her journey. And one of the things she did later in life was she went to this place that her and somebody else wanted to go to, and it just didn't work out between them. And she took the ring and she tossed it, you know. And your story reminded me of that because it is powerful in its own way. Like whatever it is, whether it's an object or thoughts that you need to get out, I completely agree with that. Release it.
Yeah. And that's try it and see what that feels like. For everyone watching and listening, give it a try, give it a go. If you're dealing with something right now, mental health related, or someone that you know or love is doing that thing in your life where you know that they need some support, have them do it. It is a very powerful practice to do. So, with men's mental health, what in your experience, what do men often mistake for strength?
I would almost say just ignoring it, like powering through it for whatever greater good that they think that does for them, like ignoring it. But it just keeps coming back. Like it's not being dealt with. It's just like a festering wound. So all those things are just sitting there, whatever they're ignoring. And in the name of strength or appearance of face, the mask, they don't go in and get the help. It's awkward or culturally unacceptable in their mind, or they already know it, or sure, they might already know it, but are they practicing it? Like something is keeping them from doing the work or getting the help in the name of looking strong, like the facade, maybe. That's kind of what I see and feel when I run into these situations.
That's fake strength. It's not real. Real strength is facing it. Having the courage to do so. That's real strength right there. So how can men support each other without turning everything into advice, competition, or silence?
I think that's an awesome, hitting at the root of the problem, right? And with my ex, I even kind of addressed it and they're like, hey, go out and find a social group, whether that's martial arts, whether that's the church, whether that's going and finding a band to play in, right? I think just being around other human beings and positive environments kind of, towards the beginning of our conversation, being that optimistic person versus that pessimistic person, putting yourselves in the social realm, like we're social creatures, right? Finding that hobby. I see it all the time in the DeBoa jiu-jitsu school, it's a male dominated sport. They joke and they have fun, but then you always see these relationships that form between certain guys that'll hit it off. Maybe they're going through something similar. Maybe it's something tragic. There was a quite a hard situation that happened where the entire school pulled together, for that family. Just being a part of some sort of outlet, and not only like physical outlet, but like having that support team within that physical outlet or, social sphere. I think that can be huge because sometimes we get into the like, I'm going through this or I'm dealing with this, nobody else is dealing with this. I don't know exactly where that comes from, but it couldn't be further from the truth, right? Sure, I got sick, but there's plenty of other people around me that got sick with the same or similar things or whatever that, can lean on me and I can lean on them. And even the girls, at the jiu-jitsu school, some of them are nurses. Like they've treated cancer patients and they know how to talk to me. So you'll just never know what you might find. You just have to go out and find those social spheres. Like I think one of the worst things you can do is just kind of hole up. I watched it happen, no matter what encouraging I gave, it was like, I'm going to stay in this house. I'm going to do my stuff, and not get out there and socialize and get that positive energy and interconnectedness like that's out there and build on those, positive relationships and learning from those older generations too that are out there, right? Like there's many people in the jiu-jitsu school that are in their 50s, 60s. they've lived life, and they have those like, hey, have you tried this? This might help you get through this thing. But if you don't go, like, you'll never know. So I think that's
Exactly.
a really good spot to start.
That's good. This is a good one for you. What happens to the people around a man when he refuses to deal with his own pain?
I think they start to dwindle. He starts to make enemies out of the individuals around them, whether they realize it or not. Like, the more people, like the people who can see clearer, like, to the heart of who a person is through what they do and what they say, are going to leave first. Um, and then they're going to start getting more and more isolated. And at first they might not notice it or understand why. And then maybe they even start identifying, like, oh, this is what's happening. But at the end of the day, like, who wants to be around a really, really toxic person? Who wants to be around somebody who keeps bringing up old things and not moving on? So, unfortunately, even the most caring ones, I think, have lines where they're like, dude, you gotta get help, or I have to take care of myself. So there's going to be those lines that are unfortunately drawn.
Yeah. If you can give one piece of recommendation or advice to people who have thought about addressing their issues, but have yet to muster up the courage to do so, what would that be?
You know the Nike slogan, just do it?
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to keep it simple, stupid, just do it. Seriously though, like, if you're at the point where you think you might need to, because of whatever reason, you should just do it. And I know it's a pain. Maybe the first therapist or the first outlet you try doesn't work. I've had a therapist who didn't work out. I've had a hobby that didn't work out, but the point is like, you keep trying until you find the person who can label it or help you get over that thing that's bothering you, versus letting it fester. I keep thinking about it, like, I think in our culture we get confused, right? We can get a sore on our arm from falling down, right? And what do? We clean it up, we put antibiotic on it, and we put a Band-Aid on it. We get hurt mentally, but what do we do? Do we do any of that stuff? If you're healthy, yeah, maybe you do clean it up. Maybe you go get it addressed. Maybe you do your outlets, and you take care of your brain, essentially. But unfortunately, in our culture, we don't necessarily think like that unless we've kind of been in it or around people that do. So yeah, I think it's just as important, like, hey, if you're recognizing, like, you have a cut or a bruise or a scrape or some sort of trauma living in your brain, you should probably go just like you would for a gash in your leg. Go work to clean it up, wash out the grit, put some antibiotic ointment on it, whether that's mental health or your social outlet or your church family, and get that advice. And just like your body heals your wounds, like, you have to do your work and your mind work to heal that brain. Put that Band-Aid on it, and then, yeah, you still probably might have a scar just like you would on your skin, but it's not that open, festering wound that you never tended to. I know it's a bit graphic, but I think it needs to be so people understand how serious, a mental health situation can be.
That's a great point. That's a really, really good point. And a good way to put it too, because we have internal wounds that are deep. And what do you do to an external wound that is deep? Well, you have to address it. Otherwise, something bad is going to happen. Likewise with all the internal stuff, the things that happen to the heart, the things that happen to the mind. And the way that you put it is wonderful. You need to address the things that are happening. If you have a wound on the inside, address it in the manner at which you can. If you are unable to go see a therapist, there are other things to do. But at the same time, there's national help. There's hotlines to call. There are ways to get support and get help, that all you have to do is pick up the phone and just do it. So I like the way that you frame that. That's good. And I want to go back to something that you had mentioned earlier on, and that's lethal loyalty and boundaries. And your therapist used the phrase lethal loyalty. That's a very, very powerful phrase. And I've never heard of that before. I've got my own twist on that. Call it pathological altruism, which is the same meaning, but lethal loyalty is great too. It's less confusing. So can you dive a little bit more into that, and what does that mean to you, and how can other people recognize that in their own life?
Yeah, so I just got out of a 10-year relationship quite fairly recently. And unfortunately, he knew all the steps to take care of mental health things, but just chose not to do them really. But me being optimistic, I see all the potential and commonalities in some of the things we had going on. And I think a little bit, excuse me, I think a little bit of my Christian background played into effect of this, right? Like you get married, you don't get divorced. I mean, I have been, but it's not like something you go to the altar with, like, oh, if this doesn't work out, I can just get a divorce, So lethal loyalty, right? Living in a situation where, the mental health has caused things to cascade to the point of, like I mentioned before, putting something away incorrectly or, hey, this isn't what happened. This is what happened. So a little bit of gaslighting to, skew the tables a bit or twist the things to where it's like, oh, this is my fault. This happened, So you're just taking on all of this burden in order to help the person feel better, to help them meet their goals, to, flip them into that positive, mindset, whether it's like a 4-hour conversation where we just kind of keep going in circles until we're like, okay, I feel better about this. And it's an everyday occurrence. So the lethal part comes from enduring that for so long. And obviously loyalty means loyalty. So, I've kind of endured. I mean, I'm not saying every day was bad, right? Or otherwise I probably wouldn't have lasted a decade. But, the fact that it wasn't all great, either. And it was just this difficult avalanche cascade of stuff that was happening. I just kept fronting the force of the avalanche, and to the point where it was like, if I don't stop, like this will be what the therapist called lethal for me. I've been through these illnesses and, I really don't need this stress. And, 7 years after the last one, it's like we're still stuck in these undercurrents of the avalanche. So at what point do you draw the line where you kind of like cut that or draw that line essentially? So where it becomes, yeah, I was loyal, but I wasn't lethal to myself. Yeah, it's pretty hard.
Yeah. So with that, when does loyalty then become self-abandonment?
Yeah, I think I probably self-abandoned quite a while ago, actually. To make that decision, I'm a journaler. When I got sick, even before I got sick, I like to write, but especially when I got sick, I was writing thoughts and things that would happen. And I noticed we would get into these arguments over the dumbest things or the silliest things or sometimes important things. But then I actually wrote down a point at which it was like, it is easier not to argue my point and let it hit the anger pass. And so that was probably about 4 or 5 years in. And so at that point, I could probably say that self-abandonment was happening, unfortunately. But my brain works in the way that optimistic, it's going to be okay, it's going to be fine. And then I also didn't realize, I was always like, how can people not remember what happened to them? And looking back through my journals, I was like, oh, wow, I'm actually one of those people. I would just kind of forget the bad stuff and the extent of the things. And then when I reread it, I was like, oh wow, I really overlooked some hard details in the name of love and loyalty, unfortunately.
So in that process, you started to learn what it is to say no and start to take care of yourself.
Yeah, the last couple of years, I had I did something I said I would never do. I actually bought a pant size one size up, and I gained some weight. I was like, I was mad, and part of it was due to the workload at the house, you know, the talking. Like I wasn't getting my exercise time in. So I was becoming inconsistent with things that matter to me. And so last January, I went to another school and I drew the line. I was like, I'm going to eat right. I'm going to work out. I'm going to make sure this isn't my hormones. And I have 6 weeks to do it in. And something that cued across my brain cells in hindsight was like, hey, I don't have to talk to him until I'm done with my workout and my meals. And so I had the power to draw that line a lot easier. Unfortunately, I didn't catch it. I just was like, oh, I have this thing. This is great, blah, blah, blah. So I go into the 6 weeks, start losing inches, and I'm like, okay, that's what it was. I need to just keep eating right, keep working out. And so last January, I started regaining that sense of self-care, where I was like, these are non-negotiables for me. Like, I'm going to eat right and I'm going to exercise, and I don't care what you say. I don't care how late you talk to me. I'm going to go work out. And that became sort of the first part of the sticking point, even though when we met, he was very active. But could not get him motivated, could not do this because of the avalanche that had happened. So unfortunately, this was like the first wedge of me, I guess, regaining my sense of self back. Yeah, it was quite a journey.
So it sounds like learning that love does not require unlimited access to you.
And that's what
What
I
did
was
that
giving.
do for your mental health alone?
That was interesting because, yes, I was getting demanded like unlimited access, even waking me up in the middle of the night, like just for some random minor catastrophe or perceived problem, and it was eye-opening. It was, I would say, almost disappointing that I was getting treated that way. Once I started really realizing what was happening, I'm like, I didn't understand like how you could expect me to function and do all these things, but also not let me sleep and make me feel bad for sleeping for 6 hours. I need 7 to 8 hours to sleep. So that was a hard concept for me, and I'm still like actually learning through therapy, like, being able to take care of yourself and do what you want to do more independently of somebody, and not giving that unlimited access is a pretty new concept for me, unfortunately, even though it's, I'm in my 30s now, so it's wild.
Uh, hey, it doesn't matter how old people are. You could be in your 40s, in your 50s, even 60s, at any age, learning to take care of the self so that you could be there for other people. That's important. How are you supposed to pour from an empty cup?
And that's something that my chief said, a long time ago when she told me, is you have to take care of you, and you can't pour from an empty cup. And I kind of carried that through my story and my journey, and so yeah, I was doing some things to keep my cup full, but at the end of the day, once we got closer to these past couple years, I was like, I am giving so much to this one person that I'm barely getting, and sometimes I'm not getting what I need. Um, and then when I tried to course correct that, we just like crashed and burned. So it was pretty difficult. And like, I'm a people pleaser too at heart, like obviously that nurture empathetic. So it's really hard for me to draw those lines and those boundaries and be like, no, I need to handle this, or I need to take a moment, or I need to take a nap because I'm exhausted. Now don't make me feel bad. Um, all those types of thoughts like were going on. And so now my therapist is actually like, yeah, your nervous system has been so like up here for so long. It felt uncomfortable, kind of like when we were talking earlier about, you know, with the axioms and in the filament, building these pathways, like I had these like anxious pathways. And so the first few months of just being alone and being okay with like just being me and like I can take a nap and nobody's gonna say anything about it, or I'm gonna do this thing and nobody's gonna say anything about it. Like the anxiety was unreal because I had to unlearn that response. Just like you said, human being, like be okay with being me and what I need in the moment. Uh, the cup is slowly like finally not just kind of hovering. Now we're kind of getting, more full. So it's a wonderful thing.
Good. When you learn to take care of yourself, your abundance in the ability of how you can take care of others greatly increases.
Hmm. And I've
Pour
already
from your
noticed that.
overflow. Yeah.
Hmm.
You give from your overflow. You don't give from an empty cup because you've got nothing to give. It's what is it that you're giving people when you give from an empty cup? You're giving them a shell of you.
Hmm. Or that frazzled energy.
And is that really what people need? Or do they need the real you?
Yeah. Yeah. That's an easy answer.
Exactly. So I have a question here on legacy. With all that you've been through in your life, all the experiences and the different things that you have faced, have you had to redefine legacy for yourself?
Hmm. Yeah, we kind of talked about it a little bit prepping for this, but with my cancer diagnosis, it's pretty well recommended like not to have kids. There's hormones and there's metastatic stuff that increases because, when you're pregnant, your immune system suppresses. So at the end of the day, it was just like, do I want to one, take that risk personally? So more of a selfish reason, or two, like, what if I did have a kid and then in 5 years because of that, then they lose their mom? So selfish and not selfish. And so I kind of just, you know, I'll say my ex and I made the decision, but I really made the decision not to be in that situation or put them in that situation. Um, so that was a sticky point for that relationship. But at the end of the day, like I was comfortable with it. Now, with that brings legacy, right? Because when you think about your legacy, you think about having kids, leaving them your business, leaving them, you know, your items that you collected from the military, so your heirlooms. Um, what are you doing this for? All of those kind of questions come up. So, and the first few years were like really hard to deal with the question of, what is my legacy? What will it be? And so I've kind of switched into the gear of like, how can I leave it better than I found it? Just like the military when you switch squadrons or bases, you walk into something, it's like, well, how can I make this better? In that line of thinking, I got a little bit selfish and I got a little bit of what can I leave behind for somebody else. So I want to write my book to help others, who might have gone through something similar. That'll always be around. And then, for my heirlooms, I'll probably leave them to my cute niece and nephew. So some trinkets that were special to me, they won't just be thrown away. But beyond that, like traveling, you know, um, being at peace with who I am and then using those encounters, for positive. So whoever I run in with and whoever I meet, like trying to make that lasting impression to be inspiring, like I have been through this crazy things, so like if I can do this, like what can you do, like kind of trying to inspire those around me to do what they need to do with the time that they have is kind of my outlook on life now.
That's a fantastic outlook. It really is. And you're right. Legacy is more than the things, it's more than stuff that you leave behind. It is the effect, the impact that you have And it's also found in the day-to-day. Legacy is a conversation that you remember 6 months ago, that you had a year ago, 10 years ago, and then you feel wonderful by remembering that conversation. That person that you had that conversation with, that is a legacy impact on you, because you're feeling better now, 6 months, a year, 10 years later, because of that conversation. The things that you did when you were younger, having been blessed with being a teacher at such a young age, you left a positive legacy impact on all those other students, and as an instructor, and all the people that you talk to on a day-to-day basis. That is legacy right there. Every single interaction. And
Yeah.
the people who watch and listen to this, they're going to get something out of it. And even if it's 10 seconds of a profound moment that makes them think and makes them feel deeper, makes them reflect in a way that they weren't doing so before, that's legacy.
Bringing it back to the little things, And yeah, I am a teacher at heart, so I see myself always in some sort of teaching capacity, whether it's martial arts, yoga, right now, with the Air Force, you know. Like you said, you just never know where that impact will happen. And then years later, somebody will reach out and be like, hey, do you remember when? We're like, oh yeah, that made such a big difference. And that right there is just like the balm that we talked about to the soul. It's so good.
Yeah. So what do you hope people carry forward because they spent time with you?
I would love to think that people who spend time around me leave a little bit more happy. Like, I'm just naturally wearing a smile, thinking positively about things despite, going through some hard stuff. So I also have this like endurance mindset of like, we can make it work. Like, it might not be perfect, but we can fix this, or what can we do? Like, problem solving. So some of those attributes combined, I would hope that people who spent any amount of time around me, like, yeah, this might not be ideal, you know, but we can still make this happen, or come up with this idea, or still look at this like, yeah, this sucks, but hey, we got each other and we're just going to get through it, and then we're going to be done with it, and then it's going to be fine. So some sort of all of that combined would be what I hope people take from me.
That's good. I have three three core questions here with a follow-up for each. And this is for you. The first one is, when you strip everything down, how are you living on purpose right now?
That one's been tricky, because I'm literally stripping down my life right now. Coming out of that relationship, it's kind of been like, what makes me anxious? What makes me nervous? What am I afraid of? Coming back to some of those earlier goals, like I want to write a book. I want to learn Claire de Lune on the piano. Like, I want to go travel. So kind of peeling back the onion lately and figuring those things out, making labels of like, oh, I don't need to be scared of this because of this, or I just need to sit with being alone and in the quiet because that's not something I normally do or have been able to do. Just existing. So that one is a work in progress for me right now.
So the follow-up to that is, what does purpose require from you in this season that it did not require from you before?
This one has to be deliberate. I went into this one knowing that I needed to get some good mental health therapy through this season. I needed to be deliberate with not only doing the therapy, but also implementing the therapy that I'm getting, to make those new habits after I've identified what is within me, like the boundary, not boundary drawing, the taking care of myself, just being okay with being like, so doing that homework that requires. And then the priority list, like kind of bringing it back to the 80/20 on Sundays, like, just like I'm doing being deliberate with my meals and training to get through the week successfully. Same thing with my work. What goals do I have to set myself up for later? Having that personal list, like, hey, I want to write my book, I want to learn this, so kind of just having a deliberate hands tab on, like, this is what I got going on, this is what I need to work on. When I feel like this, I need to, do my mental health work, or I have downtime, I can, work on my book. So kind of being deliberate in this season of establishing those new habits and getting rid of some of that old baggage and anxiety, and just kind of going back to the core, like cosmic, if you will, like, who am I, has been my homework of late.
Good. All right. The second one, how are you strengthening your union with your family, with yourself, and eventually with the kind of person who can love you in a healthy way?
So with my family, I did something really deliberate pretty close out the gate, when things started breaking down. I have a sister who's 19 and a half years younger than I am. So there's quite the age gap. And when I left the Air Force, she was only like 7. So a decade later, I haven't really talked to her that much because my ex demanded so much time of me and other things going on that I didn't really get to develop that relationship with her and another sibling. So I went back to handwritten letters, and I have 6 sisters, 6 siblings and my mom. And so I just deliberately wrote letters, and I bought like a wax seal kit, and I did it up like the whole nine. And I told each of them a different part of the story that applied to them. And I was like, feel free to compare letters and, get different pieces of the story. So it was kind of like a choose your own adventure too, if they wanted to share. And I was worried at first, and in fact, my youngest sister, she even said, she's like, "I'm nervous. I don't want to open it to my mom," and I'm just like, "Oh, just open it," So she finally read it, and um, kind of deliberately was able to grow those relationships because I went outside of the Snapchat that never got answered, and I
Yeah.
reconnected with them in that manner. And now, like, every day we're like saying hi, and we're working out together through Peloton and stuff like that. So that was a very deliberate moment that I took to reestablish those connections.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Okay. And then the next one was, so union with family,
Yourself.
myself, um, kind of like rebalancing, right? Like internally, externally, more internally right now. Um, Figuring out what is important to me, what my goals are. Again, like making sure I drop all of the baggage and the masks that I have. Like, I still find moments where I'm like, okay, that was a past thing that was put on to me. I need to drop that off. I still have triggers, so kind of identifying when that happens, shucking it off, like, this doesn't apply to me. This is not who I am. So it's a lot of that kind of deliberate internal work as well. And
And then
then,
the last part of that is eventually with the kind of person who can love you in a healthy way.
yeah. So this one is more remembering of, like, not to censor myself again. Be okay with who I am, like, I'm sure I have quirks that not everybody is gonna love 100%, or maybe they will, right? Like, unconditional to a point, right? Um, but that's what it is, right? Like, you accept the person for who they are. So just remembering that there are people out there that actually do, like, understand and are emotionally mature enough to understand that. Um, and then being okay with drawing those boundaries, right? Like, hey, I'm exhausted. I'm going to take a nap and not feel bad about it. I think are some really big highlights that I have to remember, as well as, like, asking for something is not inconveniencing them either. Like if I really need something to be like, hey, can I or can you help me with this thing? Because I would not do that for the sake of ease or whatever the reason was, right? So just kind of embracing that stuff a little bit more, I think is really important.
Definitely. So, what are you learning about the kind of connection that does not cost you your peace?
I think of things like overbearing, um, or anxiety, like just going somewhere, like you can go somewhere without worrying about if something goes wrong, the other person is gonna explode over some minute detail, that happens. So just kind of relaxing into the moment, being in true flow, like whatever happens, happens. Being in the moment, being present, having that optimistic outlook where it's like, yeah, that happened. All right, we're gonna go do this thing, it's fine.
Good. And here's the third one. And you've kind of touched on this a little already. So, but I want to circle back and make sure that people are aware as to what it is that you're doing. What are you doing now to create a legacy that lives forward?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of embracing my teacher aspects wholeheartedly. At the core, I do love to teach and impart what I know on the next generation or others, in their walks of life. And then my book, of course, that I want to finish writing, just kind of having those either day-to-day impacts at like my work or my jujitsu school that inspires people. Like I had a jujitsu girlfriend hit me up the other day and she's like, "You've competed before. How do you overcome, the nerves, And so I gave her quite a lengthy list of like, here's what's going to happen. Like you're going to get waves of adrenaline and this is how you can manage them. And, make sure you eat because, you need that energy, don't not eat, don't overeat, So just even those little things matter because she's going to remember that, and how this goes tomorrow for her, based off of, that advice, be like, oh, just help me when, all these years ago in my first competition. And then she said she's going to compete again when she's like closer to blue belt, and compare the two. You know, my advice might make a difference, So those day-to-day interactions and then, the book, however long that lasts in the world, whenever I manage to get it published, hopefully, and then whatever I end up teaching, even was it 3 years now? So anywhere from like 3 to 5 years, I have students from Goodfellow reach out to me like, "You are amazing. I'm here in life now. I got married. I became an officer, and all of this stuff still happens even in the Taekwondo days, which was over a decade ago. I still have people reach out to me like, "Hey," one of them just graduated college as a PhD, and I had him
Oh,
when he was 7 years old, and like, "You made
what did
such a
that feel like?
difference." Oh my god, that was hearing that my little 7-year-old student graduated with his PhD and it's like a NASA science level bioengineer program. I was just like, wow, and the parents are like, you made such a difference, with the discipline and like, we're so grateful, like this helped, him on his path. Like that was just amazing. It's like no words.
That's real legacy right there.
Yeah. So I could say like, you know, I hope not to die tomorrow, but if I did, like, I feel like I did make a difference, and that's all I could ask for.
Now, there's more impact out there for you.
I'd like to think
And
so.
definitely. So, when a student, a sibling, airman, or a friend remembers Jessica Lasecki years from now, what do you hope that they carry with them?
I would say some sort of warmth or that they can do something or overcome something really hard, learn anything they want to learn. That's kind of always my attitude. So I would hope that they would take that with them.
That's fantastic. This has been amazing. And I definitely want to honor your time. And I want to ask, you would want to express to people out there that perhaps is on your heart right now, what would that be?
I would say you matter. Like, what you do matters. It matters in the big scheme of things. So even if you don't think it does, the little gesture to your coworker, the doing the hard thing, maybe, being that example of grabbing a buddy for PT, it matters. You might not think those little things do, but dang, they sure add up. So just keeping that positive outlook and then doing the little things makes such a huge difference. A quick little story. One of the guys that I worked with at Goodfellow, um, I needed a PT buddy, just somebody that could like work out with me. And I was like, hey man, you want to be my PT buddy? Like, we'll go on runs. We're just exhausted, just for accountability. We're like two of the greatest friends now, years later. So, it just takes that one little thing. Um, you might not even know what it is yet. And you look back and you're like, wow, I'm glad I did that little thing. So don't miss the moment. It matters.
I love that. Thank you. People underestimate the power of exercising together, having a PT buddy, going for a walk, going for a run with each other, but doing that consistently over time, what the type of bond that builds. You just described it. So this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you for coming and joining me. It has been a true honor to be taken on a journey myself through your experiences between being thrusted into a early teaching position as a child, taking on martial arts as if it was just innately part of you, and then teaching kids, students of all ages, martial arts for a decade before you joined, and then being able to teach even more in the service. So you've been of service since you were a little kid, and that is amazing. And your health journey is nothing short of a powerful, powerful story. So thank you for sharing that. And it is who you've become in that process. And it's something that you don't take for granted at all. Time, presence, the ability to be. And now you're sharing that with the world. So thank you.
Yes. It's been a pleasure to be on your podcast. I hope it does make a difference.
Appreciate that. For anyone out there who needs mental health support, it's okay to feel what it is you're feeling. Ask for help, make the phone call, go see somebody, talk to somebody. It is never too late. There's resources all around. I'll share some resources in the link in the description of the video. Have the courage. Go with somebody if you need to. Talk to someone. Thank you for tuning in to the SMC Podcast.